You will never produce anything creative that is widely popular, and you certainly won't make money off of it. Obviously, that's hyperbole, but that is mostly true, is the fact that the majority of you will not be able to do those things. And that's because creativity is both incredibly rare because, to be creative, therefore you need to have somewhat of a unique idea. But secondly, to make money off of it is incredibly difficult because you have to be good at, another skill of like marketing, etc. Like this is the whole like Jordan Peterson thing that he talks about when he talks about, creativity and how it is somewhat stifled in a sense because it's very hard to get from the ground up. And that's why you don't hear a lot from all the different creatives that have existed throughout time. And in fact, you only hear about the handful of people. But I think that's true. But the caveat of that is that the creative people that end up persevering because they have the will in order to keep pushing on and to keep producing works, and then eventually something lands. And that's how I think League of Legends is when it comes to just having a strong mental is completely underrated in this game and in esports, and I don't think it's talked about enough. And the fact that if you have a strong mental, you are so far ahead of the fucking game of every other like pro player, like completely. Because that means that you have the will to persevere and to say, okay, I'm going to continue. I'm going to keep getting back on the horse, and I'm going to continue to try and unravel the idea of what is perfection as you keep on chasing it. And, although we all know that you can never be perfect, it's the chase and it's the pursuit that actually makes you more near to the idea of perfection itself. So I think mental is actually the best skill for a pro player to have, bar none. Well, actually, yes. No, yes. Still thinking about this on the fly. Yes, it is the best skill because when you think, oh, well, like, what are you talking about? The best skill is mechanics, or the best skill is champion diversity. Like, yes, those are great skills, but how do you think those skills come about? It's because they have the will or the mentality in order to practice those particular things. And just because they're bad at them at the very beginning, or maybe they are inherently good at one of those things, eventually a pro player is going to run into a roadblock to where it says, you're pretty fucking bad at this initially. You should just give up. They're going to run into that roadblock eventually. And so when you do, that's when the whole mentality aspect comes into play. And it's kind of weird because when you think of people that are like genuinely geniuses or genuinely very smart people, you think the ones that or the ones that are famous, etc., like all of their stories have basically been put throughout the media or throughout history or the books, etc., through trials and tribulations of constantly trying over and over again. There's no famous person that exists that just happened, like just fucking blew up instantly, no hardships, nothing. They got it right on the first song, or they got it right on, the first paper or the first book, etc. Like there's virtually no one that happens to. It's a incredibly small percentage out of the already small percentage of people that actually are famous or that have done well within their entire field. So that's why I say mental is actually the best skill to have in League of Legends. And then when you think on top of that, in pro play, and even in solo queue, I guess you guys could take this too, is that your mental affects your teammates. So not only are you affecting your own play when you decide to rage or when you decide, to do some stupid boneheaded play because of your fucking ego is that not only do you affect yourself, you affect your teammates. You affect 4 other people on the map. And so that makes everyone else play worse. And it's weird because when you think of that type of scenario and maybe you think, oh, you're being held back by your teammates, etc., you create this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Of that, oh, all these fucking other players are bad. I'm going to do this stupid play. And then obviously the stupid play doesn't work out. And so you end up fucking your teammates and then they get in a bad mood and it transfers, right? The entire emotional energy transfers. And that goes within esports as well too. Like we've all had I don't know if you guys have ever had like a Karthus in your game or something to where he dies in the jungle or something and then he just rage ults. It's like, dude, like what was the purpose of your rage ult? Your fucking ultimate is on like a 2-minute cooldown. Why would you do it when no one was near death from the enemy team anyways? It's absurd. Or we've all had the moment to where when like a jungler gets their camp stolen, they're like, oh, well, I'm gonna fucking invade you and steal your jungle. How you like that? And then they end up dying in the fucking enemy jungle too. And you're just like, not only did you get your shit taken, but then you went and fed them a kill too. And now you just made your situation 10 times fucking worse because your ego got in the way and your mental just completely fucking broke. And you made our chances to win the game even less. So, yes, your mental affects your teammates and affects the chances for you to actually win the fucking game. I feel like I'm one of those Riot, ads or whatever, like when you're solo queue. I don't know if they still, no, I don't think they do this anymore, but there was like an ad that used to pop up before, in the loading screen when you are in champion select and you're loading into the game and whatnot, is that it would say like, toxic players lose 33% more of the games or whatever the fuck, like Riot Light had implemented that shit or whatever. And then they probably realized, it's kind of a little shady. People are really going to catch on to this psychological tactic, which I did. Anyways, but I do think that certain roles do require more mental strength than others. I think top lane, well, I take that back. I think jungle requires the most mental strength out of all roles possible because you have all these fucking laners complaining that you need to gank their lane like they're the most fucking important person on the goddamn map, which is not true, obviously, because there are 3 fucking lanes and whatnot, and depends upon your team composition, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's a whole bunch of nuance, but you get the point. And so there are certain roles that need a higher mental strength, and that is also proportional to both solo queue and pro play. And I think it's often transitional as well too. It's easily transmutable to the other side of that, of pro play versus solo queue. I think just as much as you have to have a strong mental in solo queue as a jungler, you have to have it in pro play as well too, because everyone's asking for your help constantly no matter what. You may receive more blame in solo queue, but also too, people are still gonna kind of fucking blame you in pro play as well. I keep drawing back to that abstraction that I had with Medios as an interview, to where he said the reason why people don't understand jungle is because they perceive the enemy jungler as having presence in all lanes because they don't know where the enemy jungler is. But they see you and they know exactly where you are as a teammate. So therefore, you are doing less than the enemy jungler at all times, because at all times, that enemy jungler could be anywhere versus you are at a specific point on the map. And that's where the human psychology fucks it all up. Top lane is very isolated, and it's basically, you have to have the mental of, I am never going to receive help, even if I'm super fucked and it's probably beneficial for my team or my jungler to help me out. It's not going to happen. And that takes a special person. I'm just going to say. And I don't know if I have the fucking balls to do that either. So, on top of this, you have social media. Social media for pros can be very detrimental to their mental. And whether a lot of them like to admit it or not, they do read social media. They do look at Reddit. They do look at Twitter. It's very difficult to not do that, especially if you're in a high position, etc., right? And you're riding the highs and the lows of your entire career, and you get addicted to the highs themselves. And I think this is in part the idea of social media addiction is because humans are always checking in on what their social status is within the human hierarchy, right? It's to say, what is my position within the entire community that I'm in currently? But two, that means that you should try and keep track of your relative status as a human, right? What is your relative status as a human? And when that happens, that means that you demean your own status, right? So say if I have relative, I say, you know, like, what is my relative status within an entire community or an entire subset of a community? What if I'm a millionaire? Well, I'm better than 99.999% of people in the US, right? As far as like the status is concerned. But if I hang out with a whole bunch of millionaires, now I'm comparing myself to billionaires. And so therein lies the problem, is the fact that you're doing these mental gymnastics in order to compare yourself to a group in which maybe you are affiliated with, but you haven't fully like gotten in there. You haven't fully infiltrated and risen up, etc. So like, it's relative as far as status is concerned. And I think that can have a very difficult thing when it comes to social media and when it comes to pros. And maybe you're not the best mid laner or the best AD carry or whatever, then it becomes very disparaging. And as we talk about this mentality aspect of League of Legends, I think too, you shouldn't be a, negative Nancy versus a positive Polly, right? Positive Polly syndrome, which is the idea that you're overly positive about everything and that nothing really affects you and that you aren't offended by anything, or, you know, you always try and look in the positive of things. We've all met those people, and they're so fucking annoying because you know that they're so fake when they say these things. Like, generally, that's not how the average human interacts with problems, right? When you get confronted by a problem, you aren't constantly positive. Well, you know, I got a flat tire. Well, you know, at least I put on some good cologne today. Like, no, dude, like, you're going to be a little bit fucking annoyed by the world, even if it's irrational. And I like to make this akin to what I see on the broadcast as far as the LCS, in the fact that it's kind of like casters that create fake hype for the broadcast. It's just like, I know when you're creating fake hype. I know that wasn't a good play, or I know that this play was not going to mount to anything and there was going to be no kill that would be involved. There would be no significant summoners blown. There'd be no ultimates blown or anything, but you're like hyped either because you're artificially trying to hype it or you just don't know anything about the fucking game, which I could name a caster or two that do that. But at the end of the day, I think this positive Polly syndrome is kind of like faking an orgasm, right? Bear with me. Is that no one wants to have no one wants to have an orgasm faked on them, right? Like whether you're a man or a woman or whomever, it's like, no, you just want the real deal. And in fact, if you're going to do that, then I want to know exactly like how to get you an orgasm, right? Like what turns you on? Like you guys, actually 25 and older would actually know that song. It was by some guy named Joe, I guess. I thought it was R. Kelly, actually, but I looked it up and it wasn't. Anyways, but yes, we don't want positive poly syndrome. It's fucking bad and it's so annoying because it doesn't help you fix problems, right? And now you don't want to have someone ruin the entire team, like say Dardoch, for instance, right? Back in the past where remember the voice comms in Breaking Point where he was like he was laughing and shit and he was like piggy die or something like that. It's like, how fucking tilting would that be? So you can't tilt your own teammates. Second of all, feedback. The whole point of having a strong mental is not only to be strong against your opponents, but also to be strong when it comes to confrontations with your teammates. Perfect example is Mithy and the fact that he had solid feedback for his teammates, but his teammates couldn't fucking accept it in TSM. That's bad mental. That's your problem, not his problem. Now, sure, maybe he could have put it in a more eloquent way, in a more diplomatic way. Yes, that's fine. But as such, you have to take on the burden to say, okay, yes, he could have said this in a better way, but he does have a point. Or, he has some kernel of truth in that. And so you as a player need to respect that and think, okay, yes, he set it up in a fucked up way, but what was the overall point that he was trying to make? You have to take it in good faith. You have to take feedback in a good faith. And that's all part of the mentality, right? And I think in some sense, you have to be a little bit narcissistic when it comes to any creative endeavor or anything to where you're trying to be the best. You have to be narcissistic. In fact, I don't think there's any other way around it, which narcissism, essentially, if you guys are unfamiliar with the term, maybe like English is not your first language, is narcissism is the belief that you are better than you are, right? That is to say you have an inflated self-evaluation, right? So me, for instance, I could say I think I have the best post-game interviews in all of Western League of Legends. I literally believe that, actually. I think I do have the best interviews in all of Western League of Legends. Now that may seem very narcissistic, and it may seem like, well, like I don't know about that, dog. I saw your last interview or something, but that's what I believe in. Now, to get to the path of being the best or actually becoming that type of projection, I think you need to have some of that instilled within you. So, to end it all, the highest mentality I think that I've seen is from Faker, and the fact that he hasn't fucking exploded on people. And when he gets stream sniped, he hasn't exploded on people in solo queue because famously he gets stream sniped a lot. And I think at the end of the day, you have to believe in this type of mental positivity, as every loss is just a learning opportunity. And it sounds quite cliche, but when you view something as a loss, when you view something as detrimental to whatever is your progression, I think you end up falling back and you end up not judging the current situation for maybe the fruits that it can actually bear. And I think it takes a unique person in order to constantly try to keep learning from every particular situation that is involved within them. And I I see this in all aspects, whether that be in the media in terms of if they don't want to interview a particular person, or I see this in teams when they refuse to try and change their play style in terms of how they operate within the micro of the laning phase or the macro of the team fights and objective control. So I think to be truly grateful, or great, I guess, in any domain is that means to innovate. And innovation always has haters and doubt within it. So it's within your own mind in order to challenge that and to fight against that. And once you're able to do that consistently, I think you're completely unstoppable. And that's the power of mentality. And I don't think this is widely talked about within esports, and certainly not League of Legends itself.